Okay, so let's unpack this. During the 2016 U.S. election, wow, a staggering 30 million shares on Facebook
Yeah.
went to fake news stories that were actually supporting Trump.
30 million. It's hard to even picture that number, really.
Just think about that for a second. 30 million times those headlines just, landed in people's feeds.
Really gives you a sense of
Yeah,
the scale, the digital currents shaping what people see.
absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving deep into today.
And it's not just about like the existence of fake
Yeah.
news, right? It's why it gets shared so much, the resonance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And look, this isn't just a retrospective on one election. We've pulled together a really fascinating range of sources.
Yeah, we've got political science, communication studies.
Even a theological take on truth, which is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission really is to give you a clear, pretty concise understanding of this whole fake news thing.
Cut through the noise a bit.
Yeah. What is it? How does it spread? Like, well, wildfire. Who's actually behind it? And, what does it all mean for us?
So this is kind of your shortcut to getting informed on something super complex, but really important.
Consider it your express lane. So where do we start? Maybe with the big question.
What is fake news? It's such a loaded term now.
Right. It gets thrown around all the time.
But the sources actually give us some useful ways to, like, break it down.
Okay, so let's start with maybe an unexpected angle theology.
Right, Stuart Clem's work.
Yeah, he talks about vices against truth. And it's not just about being factually wrong, is it?
No, it's more about a disconnect, like between what you actually believe inside and the signals you send out, externally, the representation of your own mind.
That makes you think about the intent, doesn't it? Is someone actively lying or is it something else?
Well, that leads right into this idea of bullshit.
Ah, Frankfurt's concept.
Yeah, which Jeet here applies in the context of Trump.
Yeah.
The idea isn't necessarily lying deliberately saying something false,
Yeah.
but more of an indifference to whether it's true or not. Like, the truth value just doesn't matter for the goal.
So the focus is just on the effect it has, not whether it lines up with reality.
Exactly. The liar knows the truth and hides it. The bullshit artists, they just don't care about the truth either way. It's irrelevant.
Okay, think about Gary Johnson. Remember the "What's Aleppo" moment?
Oh, yeah. Painful.
Right. It wasn't that he was lying about Aleppo. He just didn't know.
He lacked the knowledge. Total blank.
And the political fallout was huge. It showed that even, unintentional ignorance, that truth indifference,
Yeah, even without malice.
can still sink you.
That's a great example. It wasn't deception, just a lack of concern for basic facts, and it was politically damaging.
So Clem takes this idea of individual indifference and talks about structural truth indifference.
Okay, what does he mean by that?
He's arguing that the political system itself, maybe American politics specifically,
Uh-huh.
can actually foster or even, reward not caring about the truth.
So it's not just the individuals, it's the environment.
Yeah, the structure.
Yeah.
It might create conditions where someone who, frankly, disregards facts can actually succeed, even get elected.
That's a pretty profound point. It shifts blame from just the person to the system that allows or encourages it.
Right. If the institutions don't prioritize facts, what happens then?
Okay, so that sets the stage. How does this stuff actually spread? Let's get into the Alcott and Genskow study on 2016.
Yeah, the data there is, it's pretty stark.
What stood out most?
The imbalance, just the sheer tilt. They found 115 fake news stories supporting Trump,
Okay.
shared 30 million times on Facebook. 30 million.
Wow. And for Clinton.
Much less. 41 pro-Clinton fake stories shared about 7.6 million times.
That's a huge difference. Almost 4-to-1 in terms of shares.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, what narratives were catching fire? What resonated?
Suggests maybe certain types of misinformation, maybe ones that tapped into existing partisan feelings
Right.
to spread more easily, like fuel on a fire.
And the potential exposure. Billions of instances, they estimate, just encountering these headlines.
Billions. But how do they even measure that accurately?
Well, that's the tricky part. They talk about this placebo fake news problem.
Placebo.
Yeah, in surveys, people would say they remembered seeing fake headlines that the researchers had totally made up.
Ah, so people thought they saw things they hadn't.
Exactly. It suggests our memory isn't perfect, and if a headline feels plausible or like something we should have seen.
Our brain kind of fills it in.
Yeah.
Makes measuring actual exposure really difficult.
Super difficult. But here's another key point from that study.
What's that?
Despite all the focus on Facebook and Twitter, TV, Still the main source of political news for most people back in 2016.
Okay, that's important context.
Yeah, social media was a major highway for this stuff, for fake news, definitely. But it wasn't the only source for most people.
Right. So social media gets the headlines about spreading fake news, but traditional media still holds a lot of weight.
hmm And one more thing they found. A clear link between partisanship and consuming fake news.
Makes sense.
More right-leaning fake news was out there, and it was consumed more, which, again, points to people seeking out stuff that confirms their biases.
The echo chamber effect. You look for and believe what you already think is true.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. Bayezi's perspective on social media.
Right, how it's changed.
Yeah. She argues it's moved from being mainly about, keeping up with friends, social stuff,
Uh-huh. Your family photos, that kind of thing.
to becoming more of a battleground, an information battleground.
And what's driving that change?
Well, a big one is just how many people now get their actual news from these platforms.
Yeah, it's a primary source for a lot of people.
Which makes them prime real estate for anyone trying to influence opinion. She also talks about social media mining.
Okay, what's that? Sounds a bit ominous.
It's basically using data analysis, tools to understand online groups, find the key influencers, and maybe even predict how people might act. Sort of like digital spying, almost.
So if social media is the battlefield, mining is the intelligence gathering, mapping the terrain.
Exactly. And this ties into Russia's approach to information warfare.
Which goes beyond just hacking, right?
Oh, yeah. Bioj discusses how their strategy is really about influencing consciousness, people's perception of reality. They see it as this bigger struggle between, civilizational systems. It's a battle for minds.
Shaping narratives, shaping how people see the world, that can be incredibly powerful.
And she breaks down Nimmo's 4D approach. You heard of this?
Vaguely, remind me.
Dismiss, distort, distract, and dismay.
Yeah, the core tactics, like dismiss, your critics call them biased, Russophobes, whatever.
Okay. Undermine the messenger.
Distort facts or context, twist a quote, misrepresent history.
Take things out of context.
Distract, flood the zone with other news, conspiracies, change the subject.
Throw up chaff. And dismay, basically, so chaos, fear, apathy, make people feel powerless.
That's a really useful framework. It's not just about lies, it's manipulation on different levels.
And it's not just random people doing this. Belay talks about the difference between, classic internet trolls.
That's messing with people for fun, maybe.
Yeah, or causing chaos.
I agree.
And these hybrid trolls.
Okay.
Often state-sponsored or part of organized groups. They're like information soldiers.
Information spetsnazes, she calls them.
Right. Using fake profiles, the bikini troll who seems innocent but pushes an agenda, or the Wikipedia troll subtly editing pages.
So it's coordinated, funded, strategic, a whole different level.
And then you have the bots. We can't forget the bots.
We automated cans.
Yeah, amplifying messages, making things look popular, creating this false consensus. Bio notes, Twitter stopped tracking them publicly.
Which is interesting in itself.
And Facebook estimated, a huge chunk of accounts were fake.
Bots just scale everything up massively. A few humans can control an army of fake accounts.
Okay, let's bring in Prayer's analysis now. He connects all this modern stuff back to old school propaganda.
Right. He argues social media is just the latest platform for information warfare, building on very old techniques.
So how does social media change the game for propaganda?
Well, Pryor mentions thinkers like Ellul, who said propaganda basically kills dialogue, and Hoffer, who said it needs existing beliefs to latch onto. Social media is perfect for that.
Use of the networks.
Exactly. People share stuff with like-minded friends in groups. These echo chambers are fertile ground.
Self-reinforcing loops.
And Pryor has this key idea, commanding the trend.
Commanding the trend.
Yeah, using existing stories, getting true believers excited, using those cyber warriors and botnets to basically game the algorithms, make a specific topic blow up, make it seem way more important or popular than it really is.
Like manufacturing importance?
Precisely. He gives that chilling example of ISIS hijacking the World Cup hashtag in 2014.
Right, hashtag World Cup 2014, but used for spreading propaganda and terror threats.
Shows how even unrelated trending topics can be weaponized to break into the mainstream conversation.
Pryor also talks about Russia's long history with this stuff. Aktivne meropryatия.
Active measures.
And desinformatia.
Disinformation. These aren't new concepts for them.
No. He points to things like the fake KKK reports at the University of Missouri designed to inflame racial tensions, or how they exploited the European refugee crisis to sow fear and division.
Using real events, real anxieties, but twisting them for political goals, undermining trust.
And then he details the 2016 U.S. election campaign. It wasn't just one thing, right?
No. He describes it as this complex, multi-layered operation.
You had the cyber stuff, hacking.
State media pushing narrative.
Using third-party go-betweens.
Armies of trolls.
Yeah, all coordinated. The main goals seem to be discrediting Hillary Clinton, amplifying things like the WikiLeaks email dump.
It really shows how sophisticated information warfare has become. It's a full-spectrum effort.
Okay, let's hop across the pond now. The UK context.
Right, Keenan's analysis. Post-truth foreign policy.
He looks specifically at the aftermath of the Manchester attack.
And the controversy around Jeremy Corbyn's comments.
Yeah. Corbyn basically linked UK intervention in Libya to increase terrorism risk at home, and he got hammered for it.
By politicians, by a lot of the media, yeah.
But here's the kicker, Keenan points out. A huge majority of the British public, something like 75% in one poll,
Wow.
actually agreed with him. They believed UK military actions had made terrorism more likely.
So a massive gap between the official line or the media narrative and what people actually thought.
Yeah, it really highlights that disconnect.
And the potential blowback governments face from foreign policy decisions.
Keenan digs deeper, too. He says the government knew way back in 2004 that foreign policy was a source of anger for some Muslims.
And they were aware of the risk.
And he talks about MI6 using certain Libyan groups, some with extremist links, and suggests this could be blowback, a direct link between those past actions and later domestic threats. Unintended consequences.
Raises some really tough questions about intelligence operations and their long-term effects.
He goes even further, arguing there's been a shift since 9/11 in both the UK and US.
Towards what?
Towards what he calls the fabrication of lies in foreign policy. He mentions Rumsfeld, the old Northwoods Project idea,
Right.
and points to private contractors, like the Lincoln Group, Rendon Group.
What did they do?
They were apparently hired to plant pro-coalition news stories in Iraqi and Arab media, basically paid-for propaganda presented as news.
Whoa. Right.
He even cites Rockefeller worrying about shaky intelligence being used to justify the Iraq War. It suggests a deliberate effort to manage public perception.
A systematic attempt to shape the narrative to support specific military goals.
Okay, so given all this, the scale, the tactics, the history, what can actually be done? What are the responses?
Well, Rogers and Nieder argue we shouldn't just focus on foreign interference.
What should we focus on then?
The rise of extreme domestic media. Homegrown stuff. They point out how terms like lying press or even fake news itself are now used as political weapons.
Right, to attack journalism you don't like.
Exactly. To discredit inquiry.
So what are platforms doing? Facebook? YouTube?
They talk about expanding content review, using feedback systems, trying to add transparency to political ads, you know, the labels you see now. They also define terms like clickbait, just trying to get you to click, and computational propaganda,
which is
using automation, algorithms, bots to spread biased or false information systematically.
Okay. And these media mirages.
That's like creating these whole interconnected online worlds, websites, social media groups, designed to just immerse a target audience in one specific narrative, keep them away from other views.
Like a curated reality bubble.
Pretty much. But they say these platform fixes are kind of an arms race. The tactics keep evolving.
And Rogers and Nieder also make this point about post-truth.
Yeah.
It's not just about people being fooled. It's deeper. It's a challenge to the idea that we can even agree on basic facts.
A challenge to the facticity infrastructure, they call it.
Yeah. The shared ground of evidence. You see it with things like alternative wikis popping up, challenger mainstream sources.
It's like parallel information universes being built, where different facts hold sway, eroding trust in established knowledge.
They also mention Bradshaw and Howard's work on computational propaganda.
Right, the global picture.
Showing how fake commentator accounts, bots, these hybrid human bot accounts are used everywhere.
Not just the U.S.
No, they give examples from Germany, Italy, the Netherlands. Geert Wilder's using these techniques. It's worldwide.
Underscores the need for international cooperation on this.
So what about fact-checking? That's supposed to help.
Right, it is a key response. But Rogers and Nieder point out a big limitation.
Which is?
Often, the fact checks just don't reach the same people who saw the original fake news. They exist in different bubbles.
Ah, preaching to the choir, maybe?
Kind of. They mention a Dutch study saying fact checks need to be more engaging, more accessible.
And media literacy, too.
Absolutely. Things like fake news quizzes, games like Bad News that teach you the tactics.
Right.
Helping people build critical thinking skills to spot this stuff themselves. That's crucial long term.
Interestingly, though, they also suggest the actual impact of fake news on election results might be less than we sometimes think.
Compared to what?
Compared to traditional political ads. And they argue campaigns often focus more on firing up their base.
Energizing existing supporters.
Than persuading the undecided.
That puts it in perspective a bit.
Yeah. They also note again that more junk news seems to circulate in right-leaning spaces online. And there's this debate. Should we focus more on Russia or on our own hyper-partisan media?
It's probably both, right?
Seems likely. And they shout out the Reporters Lab at Duke for tracking all the fact-checking efforts globally.
Okay, so lots of different angles on responding. What about Sample's model for evaluation?
Right. Sample proposes this model trying to fuse, non-technical human analysis with tech tools.
Okay, merging approaches.
He brings up that Russian concept again, protivoborstvo.
Yeah.
He calls it an intentional rhetorical game. Basically, seeing a lot of this fake news as a deliberate game of persuasion and manipulation.
So how does his model try to tackle that game?
Well, first he emphasizes history. Propaganda isn't new. Cave carvings, Confucius, pharaohs, Rome, cartoons, Hitler, radio. It's always been around.
Mm-hmm.
Modern tech just makes the targeting way more precise and allows for constant reinforcement.
So what does his model do?
It suggests using computational linguistics, analyzing language patterns. Can AI tell truth from lies just based on wording?
Interesting idea.
Combine that with credibility tools, checking source reputations. He admits fact-checking alone can't handle the sheer volume.
Great, it doesn't scale.
So he talks about data fidelity, like how do we verify trust online?
Okay.
His idea is this RPI software thing. It would use linguistic markers, like how many adverbs are used, sentence length, specific word choices, and measure how much an article deviates from a trusted baseline, like the Associated Press, when covering the same event.
So looking for unusual language patterns as a red flag?
Kind of. He also proposes FN in motion, the pattern spread. Or PS.
Pattern spread.
Analyzing how it spreads. Time, volume, platforms, the role of bots. Then archive all this, the language analysis, CL, and the spread patterns, PS, to build up a reputation score for authors and publishers over time.
So tracking both the content style and its distribution behavior, that's quite comprehensive.
Yeah, it's trying to build a more automated, scalable way to flag potential trouble.
Okay, bring it all together. Schroeder's perspective on media systems now.
Yeah, he offers this broader view. He notes that in some places, like Sweden, public service media are still really important for an informed public.
So not all countries are the same.
Right. He also observes that on platforms like Twitter, real engagement between regular people and politicians still pretty limited, often just elites talking to elites.
Mm-hmm. The bubble effect again?
He mentions data analytics in campaigns. Obama's campaign was famous for it. And the digital divide is still very real.
Meaning?
People with higher socioeconomic status are just way more likely to use the internet for political stuff. Access and skills still matter.
So digital media hasn't totally leveled the playing field.
Schroeder argues it hasn't fundamentally changed overall political knowledge or participation much. Why?
Because of these bigger societal factors.
Yeah, the macro constraints.
Yeah.
And just limited attention spans. We can only process so much.
Right.
But he does say populist right movements have been really good at using digital media
Also.
to bypass traditional media gatekeepers, often using the existing media system itself as a foil.
So digital tools interact with the existing political and media landscape in complex ways. It's not just the tech itself.
Exactly. It's an interaction.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. So wrapping up this deep dive, key takeaways, what sticks with you?
For me, maybe that distinction between lying and just not caring about the truth. Bullshitting. And how that indifference can become, structural.
Yeah, that's a big one. For me, it's still that sheer scale of the 2016 fake news, especially the pro-Trump stuff, and the organized nature of state disinformation, the 4Ds, the hybrid trolls.
And the long history, too. This isn't new, just amplified by tech.
Right. It's been going on forever.
Also, the fact that tackling it needs so many different things. Tech, media literacy, addressing societal divisions, There's no single magic bullet.
Definitely not. So for you listening, hopefully this deep dive gave you a solid handle on the fake news landscape.
Without drowning you in academic papers.
Where you can see the different angles, the why, the how, the impact. It's complicated, but critical to understand.
Which leaves us with maybe a final thought for you to chew on.
Go for it.
Given how sophisticated these methods are, and considering the real societal issues they exploit, how do we as individuals, as democracies, actually navigate this? How do we build resilience?
That is the big question, isn't it? Definitely something to keep thinking about. Maybe pay a little closer attention to where your information comes from online.
What's the agenda? Who benefits?
Exactly. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.